greatest love story of all time. A tragic one, yes, oops, that was a spoiler, but I think that you know who I'm talking about. The love story that inspired even Shakespeare. The one that probably started as a calculated move but ended up in history books and films and series and plays. Of course, we are talking about Marc Antony and Cleopatra. I'm Anna and I have a PhD in archaeology, and I love bringing you interesting stories from the past. Now, let's move on to this high-stakes affair. Cleopatra, a charismatic, intelligent, educated, strategic and ruthless woman famous for being the last Egyptian ruler. She was like a magnet for powerful men, especially Roman powerful men. But her love wasn't that unconditional. It was also calculated. Long story short, first she was married to her brother Ptolemy XIII. The two of them didn't see eye to eye, so they started a civil war. Then she started a love affair with Julius Caesar, who helped her destroy her brother. We have that in another video, it will appear somewhere here. So the first brother died, Cleopatra and Caesar won the civil war, had a son, Caesarion, and Cleopatra married her second brother, Ptolemy XIV. She went to Rome, where everybody knew she was Caesar's mistress. She never got the official Roman stamp of approval. You know, she stuck out from the crowd on so many levels. So Caesar was murdered, her second brother died, and the rumors were that Cleopatra actually poisoned him. So she started ruling with her son Caesarion. Now, let's meet Marc Antony. As a teenager, he took advantage of everything the city of Rome had to offer. He spent all of his time with his friends, partying, drinking, gambling, and being involved in messy love affairs. By the time he was 20, he accumulated so much debt that he decided that maybe it would be wiser to ditch Rome altogether. So he fled to Athens to study philosophy and rhetoric. You know, he wanted to change, to become the best version of himself. Well, yeah, that didn't last long, because he joined the military and fast forward, he became a Roman general and Caesar's ally. After Caesar's death, everything turned into complete chaos, and Marc Antony, Octavian Caesar's adopted son and heir, and Lepidus were in charge of eliminating Caesar's assassins. The three of them became a triumvirate. After the victory over Caesar's conspirators, Marc Antony got to rule the eastern province. Now, Cleopatra enters the chat. In 41 BC, Antony was living his best life in Tarsus, Turkey. And then he decided to call Cleopatra to join him. He knew she would be intrigued because she actually needed his help as much as he needed hers. But Cleopatra would turn this meeting into a display of power with elements of a spectacle. Her reasoning was, I might come to you, but we are playing this game on my terms. Cleopatra arrived in Tarsus on a luxurious ship, dressed as Aphrodite, showing off the Egyptian wealth. And then she invited him to party on her boat. So they partied for 2 nights and solidified their alliance. She gave him the money and he gave her her sister's head. I mean, her sister was a threat to Cleopatra. And then again, she had the support of one of the most powerful men in Rome. I guess Cleopatra was impressed by Marc Antony, as she invited him to come to Alexandria. So he went. And then he spent the whole winter there partying with Cleopatra. And they love to party. Imagine the most decadent party you can. Now multiplied by 2, and that was probably the scale of their parties. Yes, they both had a lot to gain from this relationship, but also they fell in love. By the end of his visit, she became pregnant with twins, who she gave birth to by the end of the year. Antony had to cut the visit short because of the unrest in Syria, but they stayed in touch. So a lot of things happened then. Betrayals, wars, scandals, all between Octavian and his supporters on one side and Marc Antony and his supporters on the other. The two of them were never fond of each other. They were each other's biggest threat. In the end, they had to cool it down as Rome wasn't ready for yet another civil war. So Antony married Octavian's sister, Octavia, to solidify the trust between two co-rulers. Marc Antony had two daughters with Octavia, but his heart belonged to Cleopatra. In 37 BC, he was in a war with the Parthians, and he needed the army. So who did he call? Cleopatra. She joined him in Antioch, and this was the perfect opportunity to rekindle the old flame. In return for her help with the army, Antony gave Cleopatra some of the Roman territory. Well, that probably wasn't the best move. All was going well. He had the army, he had a girl, he was winning the war, he was about to have another baby with Cleopatra, but then everything changed. Antony got destroyed by the Parthians. The triumvirate fell apart in 36 BC after Lepidus was forced by Octavian to resign. So the two remained in this game, Antony and Octavian. Now, in Rome, Octavian was leading a campaign against Marc Antony, painting him as an unfaithful, immoral husband who abandoned his loyal wife and children and went against Roman traditions, adopting Egyptian lifestyle, all because of a promiscuous queen. Antony was not that concerned by this propaganda and he moved to Alexandria with Cleopatra. When he won war in Armenia in 34 BC, he was welcomed as a victor in a pompous parade in Alexandria. There, Marc Antony and Cleopatra gave a speech to the people, cutting all ties with Octavian. Antony distributed the lands he governed between his children with Cleopatra, proclaimed Cleopatra and Caesarion the king and queen of Egypt, and he declared Caesarion legitimate son and heir of Caesar. Now all hell broke loose. This was bad for Octavian because his claim to power was through Caesar as his adopted son, and legitimacy of Caesarion as Caesar's own flesh and blood was a path to his downfall. So both Octavian and Marc Antony were preparing for the fight for the ultimate prize, Rome. As soon as the triumvirate clock struck midnight on December the 31st, 33 BC, the gloves were off, and another civil war was on the horizon. Rome was in shambles. Some supported Antony because he had the richest woman in the Mediterranean and Caesar's real son by his side, and others supported Octavian, who led with the story that Cleopatra was actually pulling all the strings. In a perfect political maneuver, Octavian declared a war against Cleopatra, betting on her bad reputation in Rome since the Caesar's days. Because the war against an influential and successful Roman would look bad and wouldn't gain him that many supporters. And in 31 BC, the war was on. It didn't last that long as Antony and Cleopatra were defeated at the Battle of Actium on 2nd September 31 BC. Now it was a damage control time. Cleopatra and Antony fled to Egypt, but they separated. He went to gather more troops and she went to Alexandria to sell her story that they actually won against Octavian. Yay! But the word was out and they started losing supporters. Nothing they did in the coming year helped them change the course of the war. And they really tried. But at that point they had more enemies than friends. On 1st of August of 30 BC, Octavian decimated Antony's army just outside Alexandria. Hearing the news, Cleopatra fled to her partially constructed tomb with her servants and sent a message to Antony that she had committed a suicide. Devastated that the love of his life died and humiliated by the defeat, Antony decided to take his own life, knowing that either way Octavian would do it. So he stabbed himself in the stomach. When Cleopatra heard what Antony had done, she sent for him, ordering to bring him to her tomb to see him one last time. Now she was alive and he was dead. such a Romeo and Juliet moment. Petra was taken to Octavian, who wanted her alive, and she knew that it was only so he can show her as a captive in his victory parade in Rome. And after that, she knew he would kill her. So she decided to hold on to her dignity, and she committed a suicide either in her palace or in her tomb. Even though we don't know how exactly she did it, the most famous version is that she allowed an asp to bite her. She died together with her servants on 10th or 12th of August 30 BC. And this was a tragic end to an epic love story. Thank you for watching our Valentine's Day special, and write down in comments which love story from history is your favorite one. And of course, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, share, send to all, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!